Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Holy Spirit, we welcome you into this conversation. I'd like to explore today stillness. Tim, welcome into the conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. So,
Be here.
we are in the same neck of the woods, kind of.
Yeah.
In a place called Pennsylvania. Penn's Woods, literally. Where did you grow up at? What was the city that you grew up in?
Hamburg, Pennsylvania.
Hamburg, Pennsylvania. When was the last time you were in Hamburg?
Wow. Since the lockdown, maybe?
Oh, really?
Probably. It was probably the last place I was when the lockdown came down. Yeah, I live 20 minutes away now.
Oh, okay, cool. I love Hamburg. My parents are in the city right next to it, Lenhartsville. And so I
That's
used
a
to live
great
up there
town.
for a while.
Yeah.
But Hamburg, for anybody who goes out there, it's right off the highway. It's this little tiny town. But you actually would never have to leave the town because they have their own little bowling alley, their own tiny little movie theater, shopping. It's like they used to have little coffee shops and stuff before the economy crashed.
Yeah.
It was a cool little place. It was.
It was a big manufacturing town in the 60s. And before
Okay.
that, huge. We had foundries, we had broom works, Coca-Cola canning, just a bunch of mills. We had machine shops. It was a place where everybody came to work from all around the town. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
A lot of shops.
It was booming at one time
town,
then, huh?
It was booming.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then I saw it crash in the 70s. They all left. All the jobs left. It was unbelievable. The mills closed down. The foundries closed down.
Wow.
They're still standing, but yeah, remember that song, Living Here in Allentown?
Yeah.
Same thing happened with us.
Wow.
The jobs
Billy
just
Joel.
left.
Living here in Allentown. Sorry for those who just heard me sing.
What a depressing song. And then to live it yet. Ugh.
It's weird because we got the Bethlehem Still up there, and now it's, what do they call it, the Still Works or something like that. I remember when they shut down, driving by it, I felt like I was in some old 80s Batman movie or something. It was like Gotham City. It was just crazy. They look like you're driving in a dinosaur park, like they were just bones of an old big Goliath creature that used to exist there. But
I remember dust clouds coming over our neighborhood, and it was just rust belching out of the smokestack in the factory next to us.
Wow.
And you couldn't breathe. You were breathing rust. It blocked out the sun. It was like a rust-colored light. It was crazy. It would cover all the cars and all the kids. We had 40 kids on my block. I grew up in a row house right next to a factory.
You had 40 kids on your block?
40 kids on the block, yeah.
What? That would be so cool, man.
It was cool. You go outside and there was 40 kids. 40 kids to pick from to play with.
That's awesome.
It was really wild.
Man.
We'd have huge games, football games, baseball, big races with our bikes and stuff.
That's so cool. Man, and they have good hills for riding bikes. That main street that goes right through Hamburg, how it goes up. I could just imagine, like, you feel like you're flying when you're coming down that thing.
Oh, man. I remember skating down a hill when we
Mm-hmm.
had like a real thick ice storm. We skated all over town, but we came down this hill. You couldn't stop. You had to just fall down and slide to a stop.
Oh man, those were days when you went sledding and
Yeah,
stuff.
I had fun growing up there.
Yeah.
And you're right. There was no reason to leave. We'd go to Reading. We'd go to Boscov's, to shop.
Yeah.
But
It's funny. I moved out to Erie this year about 6 months ago, and about a year earlier they opened up a Boscov's. And when I heard that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, Boscov's!" And so it was. I feel like a prince when I walk there because they're like, "Oh, this is Boscov's." I'm like, "I know, I'm from Reading." They're like, "Oh, you're from the mother country," Like, did you know him?
I remember the original Boscov's in Reading. It was in a row house in Reading.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they took like 3 row houses and turned it into a department store, like with
That sounds
3
cool.
floors. Oh, it was real cool. Yeah, that
Wow.
was like when I was a kid. I always hated Reading though. It always smelled like cigarettes and bus exhaust to me. We didn't have buses in
That's
Hamburg.
the first time I've ever heard that, and I'm actually
Oh,
very grateful for what you just said. Yeah.
It was
Usually it's,
disgusting.
"Oh, I hate Reading," and then it's all this nonsense. But the fact that it was cigarette smells and
Diesel.
bus exhaust, I get you. Diesel, yeah. Wow, that's cool, man. That's
10th
cool.
Street, man. That was the day.
Yeah.
10th Street was kicking back then. Yeah, I grew up in the 60s. I was born in 57, so
Dang, man.
60s were different.
Wow. You look
And
good for
everything was
your
in
age,
black
dude.
and white back then.
Everything was in
black and white.
Wow.
There was no color.
Even in real life, it was just because everything was grayed out and rust clouds everywhere and diesel fumes everywhere.
Yeah, just in my memory, though.
Yeah. I used to live in Reading for a couple years, and I remember.
Did you have a black and white TV ever?
When I was very, very little, I don't remember color. I do remember watching a black and white TV, but I think that was just because we were so broke we didn't have a color TV.
We got a color TV just to watch the moon landing, the first one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude. Wow. And then it was like it was a black sky with a bunch of people in white suits.
Yeah,
on a white
it was all black and white. What a rip-off.
We can see the red in the flag. It's like that. Yeah, man. Yeah. I used to live over on Madison Avenue in Reading, and it was beautiful because it had these. I don't know when they did it, but they put these cherry blossoms. So once a year, and it just so happens that was the week that we went to look at the house. And we're like, "Oh my God, we gotta live here!" Not to realize like it only lasts a week and then it's gone. But but it's just
where's
beautiful.
Madison?
It's over near where Spring Street is in Reading.
Yeah. Yep.
5th and Spring, so it's parallel to 5th, to the right.
Oh, okay.
And so it's basically between 5th and Center Ave. So it's this nice. It was this nice little street. But I grew up over in Fleetwood, and so we were all terrified of Reading because that's where quote unquote the bad people lived or whatever. And one day when I came back from college, I was driving up through York, Lancaster, that highway, and then I turned off and I got into Reading, into the city of Reading at nighttime. And I'm like almost crying as I'm driving through the city thinking I'm going to be dead, ripped out of my car, stabbed to death, and I'm like, okay, come on, God, help me out of this place. Right. And then I get out, and then years later, I end up going to move in there, and I'm like, man, these people are cool. Like, and so when I hear people get scared of Reading, I'm like, it's just because you've never spent time in Reading, right? Like they're just people, and of course there's violence and stuff, but most violence is usually done between people that they know each other. It's usually not random. So as long as you're not into stupid stuff, you tend to be okay. But
Hmm.
but yeah, man, I used to walk through Reading all the time, and it was fun. But
I worked in the medical arts building as an engineer for a couple of years. That was downtown near the Abe Lincoln.
oh,
It
the
was an
hotel.
eight-story building,
Oh yeah, yeah.
8-story cement building, pretty classic looking
Mhm.
thing, like from the 50s.
Mhm.
We were like the second. We were pretty high up. We weren't at the top floor, but we were pretty high up. That was a cool job.
That's nice, man.
I knew downtown Reading pretty good.
Yeah. I used to live right over there, right next door to the Abe Lincoln. There was the art gallery there. I used to live above that, and
Oh,
I used to work for them, with them for about a year before I moved off to Portugal. But the Abe Lincoln, man, that was interesting. It was, you go in, and I always felt I was going to turn around and see two dead twins looking at me. Just had that shining feel to it. Abe Lincoln like laying in a bed, in his ghostly figure. Hello, child. I don't know, something creepy. And I thought the most frightening part was the bill. You go and you order a hamburger and it was like $32. You're like, what the?
I'm going to a wedding there this fall if they have it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They're allowed to have it. Yeah, my nephew's getting married there.
Nice, nice. It's cool. It's like an apartment building now. They converted it to a big old apartment building.
Oh.
And I remember 'cause I was still living there when they were like throwing out just getting rid of all the old stuff, and somebody I guess bought it and made it into an apartment. And the restaurant I believe is still there. Um, I went there once and uh, got a drink, and I'm not a big drinker, but whatever that thing was, what did they say? I forget what it was called, but I'm just like, oh, okay, I'll try it. Like, oh, and I had to go, and I was just vomiting in their bathroom, like, somebody hold my hair, you know. It was just horrible. And then I still had to pay this incredible bill on top of it. I'm like, so that was insult on top of injury. But yeah, it's good.
I used to work a half a day on Friday and we'd go into some bar in downtown Reading and get smashed. So we'd come out of there like when everybody was coming out of work at 5 o'clock and go to our cars and drive home in rush hour. Just totally smashed. Pretty many Fridays we did that.
Wow. Yes. Very cool.
Very
So when you were
strange.
doing the medical thing, what was that all about?
I got out of art school and I didn't think I could make it as an artist. So I just got a job drawing blueprints for an engineering firm. It was drawing. I figured, I like drawing, so let's do that. And it was terrible. I didn't realize they didn't care about the drawing. They cared about the math and
Yeah.
everything's got to work.
Yep.
I'm like, oh man, I need to get out of this job. As soon as I got in, I knew I had to get out again.
But with that said, fast forward many years, what skill set or mindset um, did you learn or tap into that you still tap into today to help you with your work?
With my art,
Yeah.
wow. What's mine?
And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes I find people who tap into a really great level of success in the arts often have either an illustrated background or some type of drafting background. I think it was Jack Vinipe, whatever his name is, the guy who does those cool paintings with the women and the guys, and they all look like these gentlemen in tuxedos, and the women are all dressed up. Um, he did his first show, but and it sold out. He was like almost an instant hit. But he had this engineering background, so when he came to craft his work, he kind of engineered these pieces, right? And for some reason, I just keep hearing and seeing that happen over and over and over again. That there's like strong drafting engineering type of background in some of these people.
Yeah, I don't have that. I I was a failed engineer. I got fired. My cousin hired me and then started his own business from that business and wouldn't hire me.
He's like, no.
So I was just
Were
like
you too artsy for
alone
him?
in Reading. I had to go find another engineering job in Reading by myself. I was like, it was terrible.
Wow.
And then that place was, they lured me in with this. They said, when this guy retires, you get his job. Well, that came and went. They hired someone else. And that's what made me decide to be an artist.
Wow.
It actually ticked me off so much that I went home and started painting that night. And then I would paint 40 hours a week during my job, like, work 40 there, 40 at home. And then the next year, I worked 30 hours at home. And then the next year, 20 hours, because I was burning out. My eyes were red, and I just couldn't keep it up. So I either had to quit my job, engineering, or quit painting. And I quit engineering.
That's cool.
It was weird. You ever quit a job and just like jump off the cliff and paint full time?
All the time.
Did you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have very low risk tolerance. Some people call me delusional and insane. I just call it super creative, and I can see into the invisible, and I either trust myself, my God, my idea, or whatever. Not saying that it's always been successful, but it's one of my blessings and curses where I have very low risk tolerance, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great direction. Let's do it. And I don't need a lot of security to move in a direction, and so yeah, I've done that many times.
I had a family at the time, and I waited till the kids were out of school and on their own before I quit my job. I didn't want to fail and have that pressure, so I actually waited till they were gone, and it was just me and my wife, and she didn't want to be broke, but she was willing to try it. I saved enough for 1 year so that if I didn't sell a painting, we still wouldn't lose our house and stuff.
Yeah. See,
And I made, my bills were like 18 grand at that time. I made 13 grand my first year painting.
Oh, wow.
So I saved 18 grand to make those bills. So we were ahead of the game, but I still wouldn't have made those bills if I wouldn't have saved that money.
Yeah.
But then the next year, I made 40 grand.
Nice.
Yeah, but I was painting 70 hours a week when I first started. So I was putting out a lot of work. I had hundreds of paintings when I started my business, doing it full time. I had hundreds of paintings to offer. And then as people bought, I was producing more, and I would do 40 paintings a year when I first started. Now I do like 20, 25.
Wow. That's intense, man.
So I learned how to work as an engineer. I learned to put in a lot of hours, and that really helped me. Because when you're in art school, man, I must have did 5 paintings in 4 years that you could call a painting. You know what I mean? The rest were sketches, and I didn't produce anything that I could sell after art school. They didn't teach you how to work 40 hours a week. You had to figure that out on your own. There's nobody cracking the whip in art school at all. I mean, you don't have to paint at all if you don't want to. You're paying the bill. You're paying not to paint if you want to, right? But when you have a job, you got to do the work.
That's what I think is. I'm very curious to see, because of the quarantine, and depending on what happens with it, with this COVID stuff. I've always been a big advocate in gap years, like between high school and your first year of college. Take a year, either go get a job, go travel, go do something to get the student out of you and taste the real world.
I had a girl join the Peace Corps after a week in college. She couldn't stand it. She's like, I got to go be an adult. So this is just too much party. She
And
felt
back in your
really bad.
generation, it probably made a lot more sense to either go to college or do something like that. You know, nowadays, like college for most people is just an extension of high school, where they get
Yeah,
to have sex and drink, with mommy and daddy now. And
right.
and then when they're a senior, when they hit maybe about 21, 22, um, then all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, we got to get serious. In that last year, that senior year, they pump out something of some level of merit, but but they wasted 3 years. And
Yeah.
so would you encourage people to go to art school?
Um, I would encourage them to go to a place like Penn if they're into drawing from life and having a good teacher to learn from. But you
What's
got to
Penn?
pick this. Penn is what is it, the Academy of Fine Arts.
Oh, okay,
And
okay. So more like an atelier
they
type
had,
of thing.
hmm?
It's more of
What's
an
that?
atelier than a college.
Oh, it's a college. It's a Ivy League school.
Oh,
It's the premier art school in Pennsylvania, and it costs like 4 times more than a state school. It's Ivy League. If you could get in there and pay for it, I would take out a huge loan, but I would advise people to do that. If they're interested in art. I mean, I visited the college when I was at Temple. I went to Temple and Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. So I visited the campus, but I couldn't afford that.
hmm. Can you call it
But
Penn?
Tyler for me was not good.
No.
Like I knew the first week I was there, it wasn't going to do me any good, and it really didn't. I mean, I got a lot out of the drawing department, but not a lot out of the painting until the end. Then I could see people that painted like I wanted to paint, but I didn't see them before that. It was slim pickings back in the 70s for realism. You had
Yeah, that
Wyatt,
wasn't.
and the one that really inspired me was Rackstraw Downs. And he showed up at our school my last month at Tyler
Mm.
to give a talk and show his paintings. And it really opened my eyes, like, yeah, that's how I want to paint. But it was too late then. I should have saw him the first week. You know what I mean? That would have helped. I didn't know stuff like that existed till my last month at college. And now I still look at his work. I'm in a gallery in New York that's kind of like his gallery that he's in. Bernalucci gallery, I think he's in. I think that's how you say it, Bernalucci. And I'm in
I don't
Cavalier.
speak Italian. Oh, wow, man. Hmm. So, do you look back at your college and say, "Ugh, I was robbed"?
I used to. I don't know if I even care now, but I
Mm.
used to feel robbed. I used to feel like, I had a real talent for drawing things to look like they really look, and
Mhm.
nobody cared. That's how I felt. Like everybody
Mm.
was doing abstract and buying abstract, and they kind of kicked us to the curb. And us, when I say us, I mean people
Yeah.
that like to paint realism and draw realism. And there was not a lot of art like I wanted to make in the gallery. So I felt like I just went to 4 years of college. And it was like a mistake,
Mm.
I was a little angry about it actually.
I have a student who's I think she's in her 50s. She might actually be in her 60s now. If you're listening to this, Donna, I apologize. I don't know your age. Um, and she's always upset about her college because she graduated, I think, like in like top in her class, and she worked so hard as a student to learn, and she's an incredible painter. Um, but the stuff that I work with her in terms of composition and design, she never heard any of it before, and and it
Mm.
angers her because she feels like though she can paint really well and she can draw well, she didn't really know how to compose. She didn't know how to storytell. She didn't know how to compose. She didn't know how to really convey feeling and emotion and energy into a piece, and how to design these things to engineer these things. And like one day she gets just angry and she wrote a big letter to the school after they sent her a letter as an alumni. It was RISD, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, RISD. Send her an alumni letter. Hey, would you donate to our school? And she's like, and she's
Yeah,
still
they asked
like
me, and I
she's
was
red
like, "You
hot
got to
about
be
it.
kidding! I'm not making a living doing what I went to your school for, so I'm not going to give you any money for that."
Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's
And
no placement in art. Like they don't even take you to galleries and show you how the gallery system works.
they don't do that.
All they do is
They don't
show
even have
you
a
how to
conversation about business. They don't teach you anything in that way.
about galleries. No, nothing about business. And you're supposed to be you're supposed to run your own business as an artist. They don't tell you how to do that
Yeah,
in art
and I
school.
don't even think
Forget about it.
most artists even know that that's what it's supposed to be, a business, right?
Yeah, you don't find that out till you're in the gallery trying to get into the gallery.
Yeah.
Then you start learning all that. But I don't know if it's by design or what, but
I think it is.
you're starting at square one,
I think it's
figuring
by
that
design.
out, and you don't get a lot of help. Like other artists don't help artists because you're their competition. They're not going to
Yeah.
talk to you. It's very strange.
Yeah, I was
I
that
kind of like
weird
it like
kid.
that.
I was that weird kid in college where, teacher would be like, yeah, today we're going to talk about book illustration. So how many pages should you have? And I have my hand raised up and they're like, yes. And I'm like, so how do you write an invoice? They're like, what? Like, how do you put an invoice together for a piece of artwork?
Yeah.
And so like, I
Gallery
would
does all
always
that.
be asking these weird questions like that. And, and they would answer it, right? But if you don't have the questions or even thinking in that direction, then you're just like, which one do I like better? This brand of watercolor or that brand of watercolor? And it's like, and why are you paying $200,000 to ask that question? But
Yeah. Yeah, they don't talk about that too much, the business end.
so what was one of
And maybe they
the
do now.
lessons that you
I went
learned?
to school in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college in the 70s. Maybe they do it now.
Mm-mm. No, they do. The truth is, right now, I just read an article on this.
That would be a good thing to add to some college's curriculum, and they'd be like luring people in.
Heck yeah.
We actually get you a job. But I'll tell you what, the illustrators, the illustrating classes, I forget what they called those guys and girls, but they've got jobs right out of school. I mean, the one classmate of mine did the Wall Street headshots, those pixelated things.
Oh yeah, really? That's cool.
He coined those.
Mm.
That was his job, and he made a lot of money doing that. And they started their own ad agency, kind of like what was that? Try to think of that series. It was about the 50s. Oh shoot.
Oh, the Mad Men?
Yeah, Mad Men. They were Mad Men.
Oh,
They absolutely were. They were up in Manhattan. They did
That's
it.
cool.
But, yeah, if you wanted to be an illustrator, you could get a job right out of college. But a painter, I mean, you better get a gallery, and they better want you. And
Yeah.
I guess they just figure if you're good, that'll happen. But nobody pushes you.
They don't, and especially back in those days, and even today, like if you're talented, they want you, and you can get some scholarships and whatnot because then they use you to market them, and a lot of times it's a lie, right? Because I remember being so upset, my first year in college, coming out, looking at the drawings on the wall of the teacher that I had versus on the other wall of the other teacher, same class. The only difference was two different teachers, right? And the class that I was in, we came out looking at the wall, and they look like maybe advanced middle school, low high school drawings, And then the other kids were like tapping into some knowledge, right? And I was just like, this is just ridiculous. People pay the same money and two different teachers, and Norman Rockwell talked about this. I think he flipped a coin or something to choose between George Bridgman and this other teacher. And if he didn't get George Bridgman, he wouldn't be Rockwell, because George
Wow.
Bridgman taught him the classic, knowledge. The
Hmm.
other guy was like, rub paint in a circle and then rub it on your nipples, it's like, I don't know where I got that from, but
Here's an interesting thing. I didn't paint or draw for 10 years, maybe 11. And when I started finally, I advanced. My vision and my capability of drawing advanced without doing it. The actual, work.
Isn't that
In
fascinating
10
when that
years.
happens?
Huh?
I'm
What?
always fascinated by that. You think like if you take a hiatus, you're gonna be weaker, and yet when you sit down and do it, it's like your hand has to kind of get back into the motion of it, but your
Yeah.
brain and how
Yeah,
it
and you got to get the
connects and
feel for the
organizes,
brush.
yeah.
Right.
But the brain,
I was,
yeah, I agree with you, man. That's fascinating. Tell me
yeah.
more about that. Like, how did that feel
Well,
for you, and like, what did you
it
see?
felt awesome. The first painting, I still have the first painting I did.
Wow.
And get this, it's on a saw. It's on a giant round saw, like 30-inch round.
Like a saw blade?
Yeah, my father-in-law said, "You're a painter. Put something on this saw."
That's cool, man.
I might have done 2 paintings in college, so he knew I was like an artist. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to blow your mind. And I went home. I got a calendar from work,
Mm-hmm.
my engineering job. I took the calendar home, and it was the lost gold mine or something in Colorado. I still see the darn thing. Like it's one of them things that's on every fall calendar page. It's in Colorado. It has aspens and a big mountain and stuff. So I detailed this thing. I put 120 hours in on this saw, and I showed it to him. His jaw dropped. He's like, "Holy crap! I just wanted a barn or something on there, like a 20-minute sketch." And I just did a 120-hour painting, and I still have it. I mean, it's amazing.
That's cool.
And I'm like,
man.
holy crap! I can paint. I can paint like Rackstraw Downs. I knew I could. I just didn't have the time in college. I was partying. I was hungover. I was not going to class. I was glass blowing. I thought I'd get into that while I could.
You were glass blowing? Is that
yeah.
is that because that's where all the hot chicks were hanging out?
Oh, that was like a sport to me. Like you would
glass
get the
blowing?
hot glass and oh my God, you had to keep moving. It was like nothing I've ever done before.
Yeah, you do, right?
And it was hard. It was very hard to do, hard to master. It was a real challenge. And yeah, we could do it all night, like, and by ourselves during the day that, you couldn't get into the glass shop because people had classes and stuff, but you could go all night and just do whatever you wanted with that stuff. Yeah, that was fun. So painting was kind of boring to me in college compared to that. I mean, I knew I could always fall back on it. I always knew I could pick it up anytime I wanted to, but it just didn't happen. And then when it did, I couldn't stop.
What part of the painting process do you love the most? Or like
composing?
Yeah, like the beginning part
getting
of it?
The
like
idea. Nailing the idea down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't paint if I didn't have to. I just like composing. I would love if I had like a student that could paint, and I just give them compositions and like, here, do this.
Dude, I love that you just said that. I'm actually building that right now. I'm actually working on a piece where, actually 2 right now, where I compose the whole thing, and I hand off to a pastelist, and the other one, we should finish it this weekend. It's about 6 feet tall, but the painter, she just loves to paint, and we've been working together for years, so she understands like the science behind the composition, how to read it, and so we're going to be doing more of those where I just compose it, kind of like a musician, she calls me John Lennon, and she'll be the Paul McCartney, and she performs it, and so yeah, man. And the reason why I thought about that is I love what you just said. When I was in college, I had this great conversation with Don Rogers, an illustrator, and he said, and he was like a profound, a prolific illustrator and stuff, and he just said, I just hate the beginning, the authoring of the work, like trying to come up with an idea and designing it, composing it. I don't like that part. But once I'm past that, he's in love with finishing it. Like once he gets into the material of it. And I just found that so fascinating because I was the total opposite,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and
Yeah, I
it's
hate
beautiful.
starting a painting. It looks nothing like what your idea is. Like my ideas are done on the computer. They're completely finished except for the painting process.
Mm.
I mean, they're a little rough because they're in Photoshop. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do everything on Photoshop that you're going to do in the painting. So they're rough, but man, you know what you're going to paint. You know it's a success up before you even start.
Yeah.
So why should you have to paint it? And then that first layer looks like it's all green or it's all red or whatever you put it down with, and it looks nothing like what you thought it would be.
Mm.
And it's like the worst week of the painting process.
Yeah. Yeah.
But finishing them up is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, when you do it on the computer, then do you do a drawing first? Like, do you do a drawing from that, or an outline, or like, what do you do?
Yeah, I draw it on the panel, which is awful too.
Which is awful.
Because you know what you got on the computer, and that the computer part doesn't take that long.
No.
You get almost immediate gratification. You know, you can change a design in 40 minutes and have it become like a total success, where you can't do that in paint. You know,
Yeah.
it takes weeks to get to that point in paint.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, like even when you like in the coloring and things, like, you know, like to make a transition, you know, do you want that to be lighter or duller, or change the temperature of that one color? Do you even want that color? Like all these questions, and then on a computer, you can just with little adjustments begin to
quick.
become really sensitive to these things and make these decisions, where to do that in the past would cost you money because of the materials, the time, the all kinds of stuff, you know? It just...
Well, yeah, and you can be working on a design and figure out that this would look better as a night scene. And you can make it night in like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yep.
Just take drop all color down to like a blue or a green or a purple.
Yep.
And then change the lighting here and there, and you can make it. You can't do that in paint. It would take you weeks to change it to. I've done it, and it takes weeks. But on a computer, you can see if it works right away. I love it.
One thing I like to do on a computer that makes or breaks a painting is just simply inverting it. Not inverting the color, but like flipping it, you know? And all of a sudden, like, 'cause sometimes you naturally may compose it in one direction, but just simply flipping it, and all of a sudden it's like, boom! It's like, it's a whole different feeling. And a lot of times it's the feeling that somebody wants, right? But they're just used to constructing it in a certain way.
Yeah.
And
I have a painting where it's just a woman floating in. It's just the idea now, but she's floating in the water in an ocean, no waves, and they got the stars above, and then the horizon's bent, like the Earth is round, so it's slightly bent. Well, I turned that thing upside down and on its side, and it looks like gravity. Now is the the idea of the painting is now it's about gravity. And how we stay on this thing. How does the water stay on this thing? But when you have it upright, you don't think that way. But if you turn it upside down, man, it's all about the roundness of the Earth and how we stay on it. And you're not really looking up ever. You're looking out.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the idea until you flipped it. You couldn't get that in your head. So flipping stuff's cool. And reversing things.
There's this Brazilian martial arts called capoeira, and it's originally from came over with the Africans from Angola. They used to call it the zebra dance, and a big part of it is doing quote unquote cartwheels. Where they basically will go upside down and they'll fight by walking on their hands, and then their feet become their hands. But they say that one of the reasons they do that is because when they go upside down, they enter into the spiritual realm, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it changes their perspective. They just see things very, very different. And it just forces you to see things, Now you're not fighting a person where their head is facing you, it's you're looking at their kneecaps and, it just,
Yeah, I used to stand on my head a lot as a kid.
I used to just be dropped on my head a lot as a kid. I don't.
How many concussions do you think you've had?
Uh, that's a great question, man.
I've had a
That's a
bunch.
great question.
I did a
Wow.
header off of skateboard backwards going down a hill.
Whooey.
I hit a rock and it stopped the skateboard dead, and I flew and hit my thumbs first and then my head, and it hurt. I let out a yell. Yeah, that was in Philly.
Wow. Oh, wow. The only one I can really remember was coming out, running off the steps, and falling face first because it was icy, and I got a chipped tooth, and I still have this little tiny chipped tooth, right? You know, they didn't grow back. um, but when I'm thinking of concussions, I'm thinking of my brother more often because every time, we had 7 brothers and we had all these friends in the neighborhood and we would go and, each brother had their friends. And so we would always play these games like block chase and jailbreak. And for some stupid reason, I don't understand why he would do it. He'd climb a tree every single time and he'd be high up in a tree. The problem is once you found him in the tree, all the boys would run around and pick up rocks and sticks and just throw it at him until he fell out of the tree. It's like we do the stupidest things, go up in the woods and have BB gun fights and and shoot each other up with BB guns and.
I never got shot with a BB gun, but we had them. Put your eye out with that.
Yeah, that's funny. My brother has this little gap between his teeth, and he's looking out, and all of a sudden, bing, a BB hits him in the tooth, right? And it's just like, and then our one buddy got a BB stuck in his knee, and it was almost like a year later when the thing just kind of like popped out. He was on a
Ooh.
bus and it just kind of like popped out. It was weird. Um, but yeah, I I was raised in foster care, and one of my foster fathers, who in the future also became one of my foster brothers. It's a very weird story, but um, he when he was younger, he used to go in those same woods, and him and his karate friends would go out, and they would have these weird things where it'd just take a handful of rocks and a handful of darts, and they would just throw them up in the air and just stand there and to see who was the strongest. Yeah, it's like, it's like, but I'll tell you one of the funniest ones we used to do in PA. There was these bridges, those covered bridges,
Yep.
and bats would love to live up in those things. And so we would take rocks and we would just psych ourselves out and we would run across the bridge, right? And we would throw the rocks up, and then the bats would, and you would just run through like this cloud of bat. It was, oh man, shoot, man, we had fun.
Yeah.
Ah, PA wildlife. Oh, do you do any wildlife drawing?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. I did a bear. Let's see what else. Fox turtle, fox, pileated woodpecker. Oh man. Do a lot of cows. Do chickens,
What do
sheep.
you like about the cows?
What's that?
What do you like about doing the cows?
Oh, um, I don't know. I like the shaggy white ones, and those. I like shaggy cows more than that. The Guernsey, I guess you'd call them. I don't know. It's just their eyes are
Mm-hmm.
kind of sad. it's a sad animal. I can relate to, I can put that over across in the painting. I get a sad feeling from a cow. I like to add that to a painting. It's just stand and stare. I don't know what it is about them, but they're very, you never, if you ever see a cow run, it's an event, right? Like, why is that cow running? Like, usually they just stand around or lay it around. Quite a life.
Quite a life. Yeah. There's.
Somebody told me recently, though, he can't sell a painting with a cow in it. So it's not a good thing. He said, like, the 1800s with the, every landscape had a cow in the pasture and a pastoral look. He said, I can't sell those. They're just, it's done. It's over.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a weird thing. People just don't relate to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess because, now farming is like an industry.
Yeah. I was going down to King of Prussia once, and remember, there was this beautiful set of trees, and the light was coming down, and so the trees were silhouetted. And then there were Angus, these black cows, right? And I guess a storm was coming because they were sitting down, and just the collection of the ones that were standing in their little rectangular bodies, and then the mass of the ones that were laying down on the ground, and they were black against this, lighter green background, and then there was these nice silhouetted trees. It was just such a gorgeous moment, and there were purples that were coming out because the rain was coming, and it was just such a gorgeous moment and little composition. It was so powerful that the next day I went to work, and during my lunch break, I wanted to sketch it out, right? And then I got fired for drawing on the job. So,
I always wished my eye was a camera, because I see the wildest stuff, and it's gone in an instant. Or you're driving by, and you're like, oh man, I'll never remember that. It'll never look like that again. Usually a camera doesn't capture exactly what you see anyway, but it gets you close.
Man, imagine when we have that. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that I don't think we ever get the painting that we want it in our head. We saw that moment, like you saw that moment. You would try to capture that in paint, and you go, no, not quite. I'm gonna do it again. And then you're always searching for that. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That thing in your head that you just can't describe.
Well, it's interesting because I think one way to approach that issue is to not focus on what it looked like, but what did it feel like. And it's an approach that really works for a lot of things in life. It's like if you tell a young person, write down a list of everything you want in your mate, and then they write it down. Great hair, great curves, like whatever, right? This, that, and a lot of it's just the quote unquote the nouns of what they want. But then if you ask them, well, write down what is it that you want that person to make you feel, and then that's what you look for. It's like, how do they make you feel? And it may come in a very different package than you're used to. And so, so even with a painting, it's like, what is that feeling? And then what do you need in the image to make sure that feeling comes across? And I've always found that approach allows you a lot of wiggle room, that you don't need to try to capture, quote unquote, the way something looks like necessarily, but as long as you catch that feeling. And
I was thinking of one specific field that I drove by,
and
it was lit up gold, and so were the trees in the distance, the tree line of the field, and it had a black sky behind it, and everything was gold except for this black sky, and it was just unbelievable, so simple and so so well composed that you wouldn't have to do a thing to this. I'll just render it. And you go back the next day to photograph it, and it was blue sky, and the field. It was just like the opposite of what I saw. It was terrible.
Wow.
So that's what I mean. Like, there are times, there's that golden 5 minutes when the sun comes out low and shoots across the landscape and just makes this amazing, I don't know, pattern, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's the pattern you want to get on, into your painting. And there's only one way to do it, and that's with light across objects.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't duplicate that, it's gone.
Mm.
So that's more what I was trying to capture. That'll make you feel a certain way, of course, but if you don't get it on canvas, you're not going to get that feeling of light on those objects. And
light's really big for you in your work.
Heck, right? Yeah, that's what it's all about. We used to talk about that in college, that the Impressionists were our heroes because they painted light.
Mm.
And, Maxfield Parrish's light. And
so expound on that a little bit. Like, what, in your mind, when you're seeing light, what's going on, and how do you compare that to the mind of to the ones who came before us?
What do you mean came before us?
Like Maxwell Parrish, Monet, like the Impressionists, they came before us, right? So we're building on them. So
when they started painting,
light? Ooh, that's a great title for
light
a book.
became their subject, and they were the first ones to do that. The ones before that weren't painting light. Oh, Rembrandt, I guess, was. Yeah, Rembrandt was. But before that, it was just like they were painting religious scenes. They were really even painting landscape. They were painting something in the landscape to tell a story. But when light became the subject, holy mackerel, that changed it all.
Mm.
And I guess they were trying to figure out light with science at that time too, right? Like when they were inventing cameras, light was not even understood.
That's interesting.
It was a wave. I think they figured that out at that time. Light became a subject.
Weight. That's a weird thing when you think light actually contains weight.
When did they figure out the sun? Like, we were going around the sun, and that was a big deal. And that's our source of light. Like, I think that was around that time, too. Like, before that, they thought the sun went around us. I'm not sure.
It depends on where you're at, because there are certain books, like, someone asked me once, they said, Columbus, when he went out, he discovered that the world was not flat. It was round, right? And then you're like, yeah, but they had globes before Columbus went out. So, like, somebody crafted his flat world into a globe before.
Did they have globes? I think they just had paper maps.
I never went back and researched it. So, I don't think anybody. I'm going to ask Google, what year was the globe invented?
Thank you, Google.
1492. Well,
was the first globe
when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Wasn't that the same year?
Yeah. 1492.
Yeah. You want to hear a crazy story about Columbus?
Sure.
He's my 16th great grandfather, right? And so if we go back all the males, it goes back to him. Now, the 17th was this the Portuguese guy from Portugal, and he helped discover the what do they call it? Acazes Islands, right? Which are owned by Portugal, but they're off. And so if you're flying to like Portugal, you'll often have to stop on these islands and then get refueled or whatever, and then go to the States. So so what happened was this navigator, this explorer, had this daughter, and he was a noble, and so he ends up dying, and his daughter goes into this convent, because in those times they would protect the noble girls by putting them in these convents. And so the mother would have to pay this monthly fee, and she wasn't really bringing an income in, I guess. Uh, and so Columbus comes along and says, "Hey, lady, I see that you're paying this bill to keep your daughter in the whatchamacallit. Um, I'll make a deal with you. I'll marry her, so you don't have to start paying that bill. She's married, and in exchange, I won't ask you for a dowry, right? Because the women would have to pay the men, the men's family to marry them. But what I would ask you for is that you would give me your husband's naval library." And they made the deal, and then he got access to all her her husband's naval records, charts, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Married her, had the baby. They had a baby, Diego, who was the first governor of the Dominican Republic. Only married her for 4 years and then divorced her and left her destitute, just kind of like he did the islands. Um, and
Wow.
he wasn't really a nice guy, and
No.
and and
No.
and so yeah, that's a crazy story, but that's kind of part of how he got access to the to this knowledge of going, out into the ocean. Uh,
Huh.
but yeah, it says that the earliest terrestrial globe was made in 1492 by Martin uh, Bahayam. That's cool. With help
Huh.
of
And
mm-hmm.
and they think that there were explorers came to this country before that, the Vikings.
The Vikings, yeah.
But they didn't build globes. They didn't map. I don't think there is a Viking map anywhere. But they, and also the people, the from the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
they're pretty sure they came across the Pacific to
That's interesting.
this continent. Yeah, they find anchors that are the same as in Japan on the seafloor outside of California.
Really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, big rocks, and they're anchors.
Hmm. That's really, really neat. I know, like in Puerto Rico, when Puerto Rican babies are born, they have this little brown spot on their butts, and it's like a birthmark. And when my daughter was born, they're like, "Oh, look at she has one." And they said, "Yeah, Puerto Ricans have this brown spot, and it's a what they call a Mongolian spot because the Mongolians have it and the Puerto Ricans have it." And it's
Wow.
like, okay, what's up with that, And so, just like how's that connection there, And so, yeah. But and then even with the Vikings when they came over, somewhere in the Middle West, like Wyoming or something like that, they found like these Celtic buildings and Celtic stones that were in the ground with like Celtic writing on them. But like long before, Columbus discovered America, they were there. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's a cool thing. And then you got South America, which has like these
Oh
sculptures. I think
man.
of the Peru, the African
Right.
sculptures of the hair and the lips and the nose, and and it's like, how the heck did they get that?
Yeah, I think the oldest skull found in this continent is in South America. It was in a cave. It was really deep in this hot cave
Mm,
because there's magma, I guess, and hot springs down there. And
mm,
I can't remember how old it was, but it's at least 16,000.
yeah. And then you wonder, like, were there people on that side of the world as the continent started pulling apart, or were there not, and the continents were already pulled apart before man came onto the scene, and then they just traveled, migrated, um, you know, and obviously people migrated. I know the Chinese language is very interesting. I was watching this cool video in the Chinese language, um, and how it's 4,500 years old, and the guy who created the language, like in their pictograms, right? Like the word migrate is is it's a collection of small images that basically say the word like for speaking. and then it has a tower, and the word west, right? And so the word for migrate means like um, something happened from a tower that spoke, and they moved from the west. It's like, what in the world does that mean, right? Until you go back to the Bible and it says, "Oh, Tower of Babel, God confused their language, and the people were scattered around the earth," right? And so the Chinese, like their word for migrate, they obviously they would have moved from the west, right, from Babylon to the east, which would have been the west for them. So it's like, what, like, what's going on here? Like, so you kind of wonder, like, how, where do all these people come from? And it's fun to think about. Now you've done some sculptures, and you were telling me about the Venus that was found in the cave
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. She was found in a German cave. They
Mm.
think she's 24,000 years old. I guess they carbon dated it with the other material they found next to her, buried in this cave, and found the oldest sculpture on Earth in a cave too. I think in France, and that's a horse, and it's beautiful. It looks like a cave painting, but it's 3D. And
Oh,
I think
really?
it's soapstone. Yeah.
Now
Yep.
you did your sculpture out of soapstone, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yep.
what are the properties of that? Is it easy to carve?
Yeah. It feels like soap. It's soft. It's kind of slippery.
Hmm. Hmm.
That one gecko that I did with the dendritic pattern was pretty slippery. I dropped it and just recently and broke the tail off, but
Oh,
it
that
glued really
sucks.
well. Yeah, I found out how slippery it is.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm actually looking at this sculpture, the original one that you were talking about. Um, Assuming it's the
Venus.
original one. Uh, Pin-up woman. Um, wow. Let me see here. Yeah, 20th century. Oh, replica. Okay. I'm trying to find the original because I want to see.
Oh, the
Um,
original. Yeah.
yeah, I remember like the Venus, Wilmendorf.
Yep.
Um,
There's a bunch of Venuses. They all kind of look the same.
and yeah. So what I find amazing, if they found that in Germany, in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch. Like we have that a lot of that German ancestry, right?
Hmm.
And you can go to a flea market and see women shaped just like that. Um,
Oh.
you know what I'm saying? They tend to be with very, very skinny, skinny, skinny husbands, and then they're very voluptuous. And I'm like, oh, I guess he's the breadwinner, she's the bread eater. Like I don't know, like somebody's eating, somebody's not. Um, but the
Imagine 24,000 years ago, how much you'd have to eat to get to that size.
that's what
And you didn't have a lot of carbs. They weren't farming. They were eating meat
So what in the
and maybe
world were they
honey.
eating?
Maybe she got into
Mm,
the honey. But that was
maybe.
if that was a natural occurrence, and she was coveted. Like that was a beauty back in those days. Like she
Mm-hmm.
she didn't have to eat a lot to survive. You didn't have to feed her a lot. You didn't have to hunt as much. Like you could be that skinny guy that just sits on his butt and lets her do everything.
Mm,
Like maybe that was coveted back then. That was like the prize. Like she was a prize.
yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's African women with
Mm-hmm.
huge amounts of fat stores naturally,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it comes into some white women too, up in like European women. They're just naturally very full of fat. It
Mm-hmm.
just happens all of a sudden, and it's not because they ate too much. It's because that was their genes, and maybe that was a survival technique in 24,000 BC.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was their theory anyway. When they saw it, it was like, holy, why was this a prized woman? And that could be why, because she could feed a lot of kids, and you'd survive.
Yeah. And feed a lot of kids, but also, looking at the sculpture, and it's basically like these, the breasts are very large, rounded, the butt is very large and rounded. And if you don't look at it as sexual objects, you look at it as protection, right? And if you look at them, it's really almost having like on the front two very large bags, if you will, and on the back two very large bags. And what's in the center is the womb, right? It's almost like putting a fortress around the
Ah,
womb,
yeah,
and the bigger it was, the more protection, the more warmth. This is why women, it's kind of weird how oftentimes women are colder, and yet they have like just naturally, they store more fat than men will tend to do. Um, but when I'm looking at the sculpture, looking at it purely as, and of course, the women may have not looked at like this. They might have exaggerated these things, right? Because this was the ideal god of the fertility, the fertility gods. Um, and so,
yeah,
how do you make that god more powerful, right? Well, then
right,
you
yeah,
exaggerate, the mammogram, how you're going to feed the
yeah,
baby, but also just the way that it almost looks like the hands are pulling the breast down, and then they bulge out, and it almost looks like a huge butt on the front of them, and they have a huge butt on the back. And if you turn them to the side, it looks like between the breast is one cheek and then one cheek of the butt is the other, right? And it's like if you just turn them around, it's like the whole entire womb is just, there's a fortress wall around the womb.
hmm
And looking at it from that perspective, it's like, wow, that's actually kind of beautiful, you know.
yeah, yeah. I was amazed when I saw them. The
Yeah.
other thing about the one you were talking about, the one like Willendorf or something like that.
Hmm.
That one had like a weird hairdo.
Right.
This
And
one
the
had
little
no
little
hair.
knots.
This
Oh,
one in
interesting.
Germany had no hair, but that it almost looks like dreadlocks or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
like
yeah, like the little knotted,
or a
little
hat,
puffs.
kind of like a hat. Could be a
Oh, yeah.
hat.
Maybe, yeah. What I love about these is that there's a natural symmetry to these designs, right?
Yeah,
And that's a level, that's an intelligence that's required to translate what you're looking at, to be able to simplify um, into simple shapes and then organize those simple shapes in a way that still reads and triggers that emotion in us. And that level of intelligence is huge.
yeah,
Um, and so even a lot of artists, right? I mean, they'll go through a place where they're trying to capture every detail as possible, but then they realize, then they somewhere in their journey there, it's like, oh, okay, that's great, but like, let me simplify, right? How do I simplify and edit out down to the bare essence of what it is that I'm trying to convey or try to capture, the very spirit of
yeah,
it, if I can. And when I look at these sculptures, it's like, if these are 27,000 years old, if they could be longer, they could be, a lot of times they're carbon dating the material, which doesn't tell you how old the piece was made. They can't tell you
right.
how,
Yeah,
but the
they
materials
find
old.
charcoal near it. Yeah, at
Yeah.
the same level in the cave. That's what they use, and they use
Mm.
pollen too. If there's pollen on it, touching it,
Mm. Interesting.
they can date that. They have several dating techniques now.
That's kind of
Yeah, they don't
creepy,
date the
actually.
stone itself. They date what's on it or next to it,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and it's got to be like a carbon material or
Yeah.
pollen.
That's interesting, man. But let's say it's 27,000 years old. The question that I have is our desire to design art, not just make it, but design it. Is that a natural thing, or is that from generations of acquiring knowledge? And so if it's the second, and this is, this one says 23,000 years before Christ was made. I mean, that this was found. Then how many generations of art crafting had to take place before, you know, it was a
Yeah.
trade, or a secret or a language that was passed down to an apprentice student relationship to think like we're designing something.
Well, cave paintings go back. They don't even know how old they are. They go way back, 40,000 years. This is the oldest, not the oldest sculpture, but the oldest sculpture was 36,000 years old. That survived. I mean, there's probably stuff under the ocean. I don't know how you date that, but because the seas rose 200 feet since the last ice age, a lot of this stuff is buried under the ocean that was from that era. I don't know. I think art's as old as we are. I think we made art right as soon as we got this brain. We started designing things, and they said we have our brain 200,000 years. Our species had the same kind of thinking processing brain, like a processor, for as long as we're humans. It was just 250 maybe 1,000 years. They're still figuring that out, how old our species is. But it's pretty darn old. I mean, we probably had art going back 100,000 years. It just didn't survive. It's dust now. That paint that was on the wall of a cave in 100,000 years ago, BC or whatever, is gone. It's just, the paint got mold and fell off. The paint was made with, vegetable oil or something, and it's just gone. So you really can't tell how old art is in our species if you're just going to go by the art.
Yeah.
You've got to look at the brain and see, well, did we have that brain back then? Well, yeah, then we probably made art. Probably made music. They find flutes made out of bone in these caves too. So they were making music.
Yeah, and even with that, it's like you make it, but music is a language too, right? It has to be at some level taught. I mean, unless you're just banging on things and you kind of catch a pattern, maybe the brain works that way, but but if you don't have music that you're listening to, and now the only music you're listening to is either coming out of nature, or out of yourself, it's a very, very fascinating thing. I'll tell you a crazy experiment to do one day. It'll warp your mind in a beautiful way. I read a quote by Tesla, and it said, if you really want to understand the universe, you have to start thinking in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration.
Yeah.
Okay, so what in the world does that mean? So one day I was like, I want to try something. And so I sat there and I just allowed my mind to capture the in and out, the rhythm of my breath, right? And it was the only thing I allowed myself to focus on for, a couple seconds. And I got that. And then as I held that in my mind and I could hear it and feel it, I then heard my heartbeat, right? And I would hold those two rhythms. And I wasn't controlling them, right? It was just breathing and the heartbeat. And then I held the sound of the air conditioner, the hum of it. And then I added, as the cars went by, that was a whole nother set of instruments, and that was a little bit different, obviously, that hum. And then the last one I did is I looked out the window, and because it was the wind was blowing, the trees were swaying in a certain vibration, right? And then I just visually held the movement of that, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, like this is an orchestra, and it's playing a song right now. Like I felt quote unquote one with the universe, right? Like, and not only the the natural universe, but the one inside of me, the one outside of me, the man-made aspects between the car and the air conditioner, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. I encourage anyone to go. Just take 3-4 minutes and focus on, 4 or 5 different hums, and I just wonder if you're put back in a time like this where there were no distractions. You're always on alert because the saber-toothed tiger would, jump and bite you in the back of the neck.
Did you ever hear a mountain lion growl behind you in the woods?
Hell no.
The hair literally stands up on your neck. It's
Does
frightening.
that happen to you?
Oh yeah, in Yosemite, Sequoia National Park, which is next to Yosemite. Yeah, we were out looking for firewood, my wife and I. And I didn't know she was with me. I thought I went out alone. She was behind me picking up wood. And from behind me, I heard this growl. And she said I shot by her at like top speed, dropped my wood, and just bolted. And she followed me. But I never saw her. I didn't know she was with me till we stopped at our camp. And I'm like, did you hear that? She said, yeah, I heard it.
Wait. You didn't know your wife was with you, or the mountain lion?
I thought I was out in we just got to camp, and I went to get some wood to start a fire, and I had to go way into the woods because it was a camp that people had gone to a lot, so it was clean.
Oh, got you.
There was no wood, so I'm way back in there. And she followed me. I didn't know it. And
your wife followed you. Your wife followed you. Okay.
Yeah, so she heard.
Maybe it was her growling because you guys were all out alone and stuff. No, I'm sure.
No, it was a low growl, like "Get out of here! Get out of my area." That's how I felt. Like I'm out. I'm gone. Don't worry about it.
Wow.
Yeah, and they say don't run, and I never made eye contact. I didn't want to turn around and see this thing because I thought it would jump on me.
Yeah.
Like I had 1 second to figure out what to do, and I was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, did you ever hear a tree's sap going up through under its bark? You can actually hear that.
Wait a second. I'm going to say no, but for some reason it does sound very familiar.
Yeah, I mean, it's constantly dragging up water from the ground up to its top all the time.
Wow.
Like gallons of it.
Wow.
A lot. Yeah. Trees are incredible. I almost said animals. They're plants, but they communicate with each other through their roots, and like they help each other survive. Because if one dies, they could all die, and they do it through their root system. It's pretty cool.
That's
I just
amazing.
read a book about it. I don't remember the name of the book now.
Were they talking about that aspen grove that they all look like they're all separate trees, but it's actually one big living organism?
Yeah. The biggest, I don't know if it's the biggest organism, but it's the oldest. The oldest part of a tree is below the ground. Like that root system can be way older than that tree that you're looking at.
That's how I look at artwork, actually. It's, if I'm looking at a painting and, there's a sky in there and a person in the back and a cow and and a sun and a moon, not a moon, but like a hill and, a barn, if that's the image, right, that you're looking at, and you're looking at all these individual pieces. To me, that's like the trees that you see on top of the surface. But the design and the composition is the root work that actually gives that whole thing real life.
Generations. Yeah, you go back to where, as far as you can. That's why I like cave paintings. I mean, I informs my art. I would love to get what they felt into my art, and that's the goal. It's hard to do.
Do you spend a lot of times out in nature?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So tell us a story about like once when you went out there and you kind of heard the voice or felt the unction, the muse came to you as you slept against a tree. And then you were inspired to and then tell us what inspired and what came out of it.
I always climbed trees as a kid. I was always up in them, and there was a huge beech tree where I went to school, college, and I'd go to the top of it. I was above all the buildings. That thing was maybe 100 feet high.
Wow.
A beech tree gives you so many things to hang on to. A big beech, and actually it was Beach Avenue where Tyler School of Art was. Elkins and Beach.
Yeah. My sister lives on Beach Avenue, right down at the other end of Tyler. Well, it's not Tyler
Cheltenham.
anymore, but
Yeah, right. Well, that's called beach because these beaches were huge. The whole campus was full of them. Yeah, I one of my projects, I climbed to the top of it, and we had the tent caterpillars at that time, and I made a tent around myself, and the class came out, and my project was like narrative art, narrative sculpture, and I cut myself out of this tent and climbed down. That was my project. It was terrible.
You were like a caterpillar and you came out like a butterfly?
Yeah. It was just so stupid. But at that time, that was art. Like narrative art was popular in New York. So, but yeah, I'd do anything.
This is my performance piece. I am a caterpillar, and I am now a butterfly. You should have jumped off of it. Ah. No. Wow, I wasn't expecting a story like that. So I once said about your work that if Andrew Wyeth and Maxfield Parrish were walking down the street having a conversation, your art would be what would be manifested out of that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think
and that's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, and for anyone who checks it out, what I'm talking about is you glaze, right? Is that how you're doing it?
Glazes, yeah.
So the glazing
technique. And I learned that from Maxfield's book.
Yeah, it really captures that incredible luminosity, that light. And then on top of that, you have this beautiful Andrew Wyeth stillness that comes in. And it's really this beautiful experience. Like it's your own work, your own style, your own stories. But you really feel at the same time inside this stillness that you're connecting. The legacy is not the right word, but you're connecting to this moment. And I think that's how I like to put it. It's not that you're like Andrew Wyeth or like Maxfield Parrish. You're your own person, but you are the conversation between these two artists. And
Think about when the Beatles started doing their thing. All the music they drew from to get sound. You have to borrow. You just have to. Yeah. I don't think you can come up with anything original because you have all these memories.
Yep.
And they were both definitely big influences from childhood on up.
And the only originality
they painted both Wyeths.
What was that?
And the sycamore I paint over and over in my work. The Wyeths both painted that same tree.
Wow.
Through there. They lived next to it. Love that tree.
Wow.
It's just, it's got grace. Its composition is right there. It's like a sculpture that you can walk around and go under it. And it's just amazing. It's almost like such an experience to be around that tree. And you can't help but bring that into the painting. And then to have both of them feel the same thing, and you're kind of like living what they lived. That's an experience that I don't get with any other painting that I do. Like that's to bring something personal like that into a painting. You can't do it for every painting, but man, when you get to do it, it's fun.
Wow.
I wish I could just paint like that. Like that's how Andrew Wyeth painted. I think he had that luxury. I don't quite have that luxury. Maybe I'd only do 5 paintings a year, but they'd be like those paintings. I don't know, maybe I should start thinking more like that.
Maybe. Here's a crazy thought. If a tree dies and it goes to tree heaven, And in tree heaven, it becomes conscious of all the effects it has had on other living entities. Within that consciousness, there would have to be different levels because, like a tree like this, that other artists have come to for generations to sit before it, to capture its beauty. Why didn't the artist go to the big tree down the road, right? Like, why have several artists, or, not even just the artists, but like the people who walk by it and see it, and how many first kisses were underneath that tree? How many plots to do evil were underneath that tree? How many? It just and it makes me think in terms of the artist. That you've painted that tree several times.
Yeah.
And now this tree that's rooted and anchored in this one location in all of the universe is now hanging in how many different people's homes or museums or galleries, and even potentially throughout the world through posters and things like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that tree as a kid going to the Reading Museum. NC's painting was of that tree. So when I saw it in real life, I recognized it. I'm like, I know this tree.
Didn't you talk to somebody who told you that it was a tree or something as well? Like a gallery owner or some lady who grew up around there and she was taking care of all the Wyeth paintings.
Oh yeah. That was her first job, working for Andrew Wyeth, cataloging his dad's paintings that were left. That was her first job. But I had seen their paintings of this tree long before I saw the tree. So
Gotcha. Seeing
it in real life, you're just like, and how to find it. Nobody took me to the tree. They told me where it was. So I'm in this park for the Brandywine Battlefield Museum. It's just a park like atmosphere. There's no guide. You can get a guide, but I didn't. I show up and I didn't know where this tree was. So I'm looking at all these sycamores everywhere, and I had to recognize the tree to find the right one. It was bizarre. And when I finally saw the shape, I'm like, that's the one. It was weird.
Did you feel inside that it was it? Or is it just an intellectual, there's the one? Or did you feel like...
It's the shape. It was the shape that I'd seen in all their paintings. I had never seen this tree before. And I went by myself. I went to find the tree.
Wow.
And there it was.
Did you cry?
I didn't have a guide. I knew about where it was. But that's a big park. There's a parking lot, and you just start walking. Or you take a bus ride. They weren't open at the time. It was like 5 o'clock. So I didn't have a guide.
What was the emotional experience that you had when it clicked? Like, oh my God, there it is.
Yeah, it was reverence. Reverence and just like, wow, I'm in the presence of something awesome, something great, like meeting a hero almost. Like googly eyes, like gaga. Your jaw drops. You just like you're in awe. And you're walking under it, and your head's straight up, looking straight up. Like, how high is it, and how wide is it? It's huge. This thing is gigantic. It's one of the oldest trees in the state. Sycamores, 350 years old.
Did you hug it?
You couldn't. It was so wide. You know what I mean? You couldn't get your arms around it.
It's like a small child with a fat dad.
And touch it. I couldn't touch the bottom branch. It was too high. I couldn't get up in this tree.
Wow.
And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to climb it right away.
You know what your magnus opus will be, right? That final great work that you do will be climbing that tree with a tent like a caterpillar coming out.
Getting arrested for it.
Yeah. Don't arrest me. I'm just a butterfly. I identify with
I'm a caterpillar. Yeah.
Get your hands off this caterpillar. That'll that'll bring the circle, the circle of life full circle.
God. I don't even have
You
a
do a
picture of
painting of
myself
that or a
up in
drawing
tree.
with it, with a guy with a tent on the top of the tree. That'd be fun. uh, wow, very cool, man. Very cool.
I was
So
going to paint someone in the tree for scale, but I didn't.
you may paint a couple little kids running around that.
Yeah, I haven't really done anything for scale with it yet. I guess the one has the house that's there. That would give you a scale.
Yeah, it's interesting because of the shape of the tree. It actually looks squat. Like it's not really a tall. It looks big,
It's
right?
wide. Those branches go
Yeah,
out
it's like a sweet
as
potato
tall as
tree.
maybe 100 feet. Like each branch could be a tree in its own right if you stood it up.
Wow.
They're huge.
Wow.
I got up into the first branch and got my picture taken. I took a ladder and I went up in the first branch and sat there and got my picture taken with it.
That's cool.
Did
That's
that
cool.
last year.
Wow. So what are you working on currently then? What are you working on right now?
Right now, I just finished a hibiscus painting, which I like.
What's that?
Hibiscus is a huge white flower.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's just bigger than my head, this flower. And
It's huge.
we're growing them out in the backyard here.
Hmm.
And also a sumac painting with an apple tree and some crows flying.
Nice.
Did the interior of a barn in Ole, which is huge, 40 inch by 24.
Okay.
Did the interior looking out a window with some geraniums in the snow. I'm trying to put a show together for September. I'm hoping they'll have it at the gallery. I don't know what's going to happen. The gallery is open for people with, if they call and get an appointment, they can come look at work, but they can't just walk into the gallery, which means no opening, at least now. So, yeah, I've been working on this show for 2 years, so I'm kind of psyched to have it, but I don't know if they're going to.
Well, we might have to do an online opening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really like openings, so it's actually a good thing. But I also want people to
what don't you like about them?
About openings?
Mm-hmm.
There's a line of people that talk to me, and I feel like I short shrift everybody to get to the next person. Like, I don't talk about what I want to talk about long enough. Mm-hmm. So I feel disappointed, and I feel like, I could have talked to that person longer, and I couldn't do it. So I'm uncomfortable through the whole thing. I don't drink anything. And it's like a 2-hour interview with, as many people that want to talk to me. It's irritating. Because I can't do it right. I can't talk long enough.
And then you're just repeating the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, pretty much.
How did you fall in love with work?
We're talking about, their work. Sometimes students will come.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that I like. I'd rather do that than talk about myself. I like looking at people's work at my openings. That's one of the things I do like about it. You meet cool artists. But,
nice.
The clients, I don't feel like I get to talk to them long enough. So I'd rather they just let the work talk for itself, I guess, and have no opening at all, rather than have it, be so. It's chaotic, I think.
Well, I'm seeing a dilemma in there, and my brain says, "Let's take a risk and create a solution around it." And I'm like thinking to myself, like, man, imagine if you did had an opening, right? But you had pre-events before the opening, and so you you would have like maybe a series of videos that would go out for the people who wanted to engage. So you could tell your story so that question was answered so they didn't have to ask you when they're there. Um, you could maybe even take a set of videos where you're actually talking about each painting again to prepare people before they get there. And then you might even have an event where we're going to talk about these three paintings. And if you're interested in this one, this one, and this one, then you can sign up for that event. And again, it could be done through Zoom or something where they could come and ask a little bit more questions about that specific painting or you know, so like leading them through this longer experience that then when they come to the opening, a lot of that's already done, and and it might be a very different kind of experience, you know.
Yeah.
So that's I wonder if there's something in that, but
I do write about each painting, and so there's like a paragraph of each painting available at the show.
okay.
That's typed out, and you know,
And you have this done. Your how many paintings are you going to put in the
25,
September?
probably 24.
25? That's
So
interesting.
yeah, there'll be. I write about each one, and it's a little story about it, and yeah, that I do that for every show.
Nice. I'll talk to you after this. I have a great idea. If you're interested in putting a couple things together to help with some marketing around that.
Okay.
And we can talk about that. But and where will that show be? Do you or do you have to figure that out?
It's Greenville, Delaware, Somerville Manning Gallery.
Okay, cool. And about how many
Greenville
galleries
is
are you
where
in right
Biden
now?
lives.
Oh, really?
One. No, actually two. I'm in Cavalier Galleries. They have a gallery in New York, one in Greenwich, Connecticut, one in Nantucket, and one down in Miami.
Oh, okay, nice.
Well, no, Palm Springs.
So if we do
Palm
the thing
Springs.
in February, in the fall, in that place
Yeah.
that Joe Biden lives, we can get Joe
Yeah, he
Biden
lives in.
to
He lives. I've
speak
never
on the
seen him.
thing. It's like, I
Yeah, he's
approve.
not going to be busy in September. Come on over, Joe. He'll be in his basement yet.
Yeah, exactly. The funniest thing I ever heard about a Joe Biden thing was he's like, "This is Joe Biden, and I forgot this message." I forgot this message. Ay, 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 ay. But he would be the maybe the president with the nicest smile, though. I'll say that about him. He's a cool guy.
I don't know. Trump smiles a lot.
Yeah, but it's
Not recently,
it's not a cool smile. You know, it looks like he's always doing like that fish pose or whatever for people taking a selfie. You know, whatever. It's I don't get it. You know, even he had that little weird, you know, almost Elvis-y looking lip thing going on even when he was younger, and it's like, you know, Elvis always looked like he had like a fish hook in his one side of
have
his
Elvis's mouth.
right?
You're right.
But with Trump, it's like two. It's like two fish hooks. You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of reminds me of he should paint little fangs on them so it would look like the mouth of the predator, from, like a little tiny predator mouth. That would be funny. Yeah. Very cool, man. Very cool. So, I'm gonna ask you one last question. It's gonna be the most important question in the last 2 hours or hour and a half, whatever it's been. Jim, what do you like to eat?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti. Okay. All right.
My wife's spaghetti. She makes good spaghetti. I can't find it.
Spaghetti?
I can't find a sauce like it anywhere.
Ooh.
It's the best sauce.
So she's a homemade sauce then, huh?
Oh yeah. It goes all day.
Wow.
And that's.
So do you like more sauce or more spaghetti?
Oh yeah, meat sauce. Definitely.
With a couple of little things of spaghetti in there.
I could eat the meat sauce cold out of the fridge.
Yeah.
Oh, I put it
Do
on
you
bread
dip it?
cold
Yeah,
for lunch.
bread. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, like a
Wow.
spaghetti sauce sandwich. It's kind of
Mm.
like a sloppy Joe, but cold.
Yeah. Oh,
It's great.
nice. So is her sauce
But it's
really
fucking
heavy in the meat? Is it more like almost like a
yeah,
chili?
yeah. And she makes a
Ooh.
mean chili too.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
you're invited, man.
Oh, I've already invited myself, dude. You didn't have to invite
Give
me,
you a
but
quart
yes,
of chili to take home too.
that's incredible. Oh my God.
It is incredible. Yeah, I
Was it?
can't find that sauce anywhere. I've tried. She came up with it on her own, like after 50 years of cooking.
Wow. Is she a good cook?
Heck yeah, yeah,
Is that
yep.
one of the top three reasons why you're still with her?
3 reasons. Yeah, and she has all my secrets. I can't leave.
I love that you say that, man. I'm a single guy. I'm in my 40s, right? But I'll tell you, I was like, and I'm debating, like, do I just want a companion to live life with, or do I want to be married with somebody? And at the end, I was thinking a lot about it. I'm like, no, I want a wife because I want someone to witness my life, and I want to be able to
Yeah,
witness their life, like,
yeah.
um,
It's
and
more fun bouncing stuff off of people. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, she has never left me home alone until this year. She went with her sister for like a week, and I got into a rhythm like a caveman rhythm, where I would just eat whenever I wanted, whatever I wanted that she left for me, and go to sleep whenever I wanted. I was
you're like a
free.
college kid. You're free.
I was free, yeah, and I started thinking different. I didn't know who she was when she got home. It was like the rhythm was gone that we had. I just
Mm,
totally escaped it, and I missed it. I was really getting lonely, like starting to talk to myself. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like it's just something about someone being there. It's a
yeah,
different rhythm, total different rhythm. But
that's
living alone's not bad either.
well, yeah.
It's a different rhythm though.
It's a very different rhythm, I get a little nervous when the day comes where I have to invite somebody into that rhythm, right? Because I kind of like my own time, my own space. Um,
Yeah,
but at the same time, it sucks, especially in quarantine, right? Because now I'm forced to be alone. Where typically, like I love spending most of the day by myself doing my thing, and then when I need that human interaction, I'll go
yeah,
to a coffee shop or whatever, and you get your ways out of it, but like not being able to do that, it's you're pulling your own hair, like
yeah,
and so but I'm
yeah.
assuming for some people it's the other way around, where it's like now they're stuck with their kids and their wives and their in-laws and their whatever somethings,
Yeah,
and they can't get away.
yeah. We've done pretty well with it because that's kind of how we've lived, since we got together. I mean, she
Mm,
worked for a long time, but we've been home alone for years.
nice.
And she goes to her end of the house during the day, and I stay in my end, so that my rhythm don't interrupt hers, and my
Yeah.
noise don't interrupt her noise, and that kind of thing. And then we meet around 5 and have an evening
Cool.
together.
Do you
So it really
what does
hasn't
she do on
changed.
her own? What does she do on her end?
She's up on her computer. She likes to play computer games.
What? She's a
So
gamer?
I know she's a puzzler. She'll go on those puzzles, like card puzzles,
Really?
like almost solitaire. I think it is
Mm-hmm.
solitaire. It's all kinds of levels of it, and she says it like challenges her brain, and then she does that for a couple hours in the morning.
Nice.
And then in the afternoon, it's like chores time, the wash or cleaning or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night we watch TV.
That's nice. What are some shows that you guys enjoy?
What shows?
Yeah.
Uh, um, we watch Billions,
Okay.
which is just
I
nuts,
don't know.
man. That's a crazy show. We watched the whole Mad Men series. We
Nice.
didn't watch the one about making uh, prank. What was that show?
No. They're like
Breaking Bad. We didn't watch that, but we would probably like that, I guess.
Baking
Like
bread.
we have a satellite dish for uh, our TV, so we don't get Netflix. We have a satellite for internet too, so it's like a cheap plan, but we don't get we can't watch Netflix or nothing like that.
Oh, really?
We can't stream movies. It would take up all our
Your bandwidth.
yeah, we get like 40 gigs a month.
Oh, wow.
And we just chew all that up quick. So we have to watch we have Cinemax and HBO and
Okay.
Showtime. So whatever's on.
Yeah.
I like to watch Colbert every night. It makes me
Nice.
laugh.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Bill Maher. He don't make
Bill
me
Maher,
laugh so much anymore. He's bummed out with this.
He's getting too
He's
serious.
like you said. He's like, man, I'm tired of being alone.
Oh, because he's single, right? He's not
Yeah,
married.
yeah. He can't. I don't think he can date right now.
It must be hard for him.
Think of all those Tinder people. Are they dating?
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm not on there any longer because it's too tempting for things. But I just met somebody on Facebook date, and I think we're gonna go break quarantine next weekend. So by the time this is aired, we might have broke it many times by then. But it's kind of cool because there's no restaurants to go to, right? So it's actually kind of neat because we're gonna go on a picnic, Okay.
Yeah.
We gotta go meet somewhere. So let's go meet in a park somewhere and have some,
Yeah.
some grub and rub, But
Take some hoagies.
hoagies, yeah, some hoagies. That's a good
Big
idea.
sandwich.
Oh, what?
Like, who was it? That Chris Farley. He was in a movie. And he took this girl on a date, and she was eating this giant sandwich, and she mowed it before he could eat his. And he's a big eater. And he says, "Oh, the only woman I ever saw take a sandwich like that was my mom. I love you."
That's Tommy Boy, right? That was
I
Tommy
think
Boy.
so.
He was sitting on that boat with her, and like he, and her side was up, and he was like,
one of my favorite lines of all time.
"Oh, God, yeah."
He didn't say eat a sandwich. He said take a sandwich.
That's brilliant.
Like, what? That's a certain kind of eating, then.
Yeah.
Very specific. You pound that sandwich. Oh my God. So irreverent. That's
Wow.
so
You know what, man? I have to go back and watch that movie. It was brilliant when I was a kid, but as an adult, I'm sure it's a whole nother level. Wow.
Yeah, some movies hold up, and I think his would.
Yeah, I think so. Especially like being in PA with the whole cow tipping thing and the yeah, because they were cow tipping.
I just figured out I was on the wrong phone the whole time. I was on my cordless.
Uh-oh.
Well, did that sound bad?
No, you sound the same, man. It was all good. But yeah, Tim. Well, I'm gonna thank you, man. So I'm gonna put your link to your Facebook in the show notes so that people can go and check out your work. Good chat.
Yeah, they have to go to albums in the photo section, I guess. To see, there's 5 different albums with like 170 total paintings in them.
Wow. Yeah. So I'll put that link. So you just click on it. It'll take you straight to the albums. And so on that note, thanks.
All right. Thank you.